this is Gina. Today I'm going to show you how to make this 3-strand bracelet with some of the beads and components that are found in the Spring Palette treasure bag. However, these are very common size beads and components, and you can make this bracelet regardless. You can also modify it and do it a little differently to suit your own beads. So this is what we're going to make, and this is the same stitch that we did in this strand here is the same stitch that we did in the previous tutorial called Dainty Stackable Bracelets. So I show you how to do individual strands too, so if you're interested you can go do that. But you can see just in the difference of the beads I used, how much of a different look you can get. This one's really cute and whimsical, and this one's more sophisticated looking, and that's only a change of beads. So this is a 4mm round crackle bead, and this is a imitation jade half peach or magma, and here's one with 4x3 rondelles. So you can see what a difference you can make with this particular stitch. So anyway, I then show you how to make this stitch in the middle. Mine is a little wavy simply because I made my strands previous to the video, and then I do a beginning and then I swap out the strand I already made. In this one, I was figuring out how I wanted to present my stitch, so I did my center bead a little different on some of them, so it made it a little wavy. If you stay consistent and do it exactly how I show you in the video, you will not have a little bit of a wave in it. Even with that, it's still very pretty. So let me show you what this looks like. I put this on, and this is what this looks like. Very pretty. Nice and bold. Works out really nicely. And let's go ahead and look at the material list and see what it takes to make this bracelet. Okay, for this project today, we will be using a few beads and components from the newest treasure bag, the Spring Palette treasure bag. However, these things are pretty common, and you should be able to do this just by looking in your stash, or I do have some of these things on my website, most of them, and you can get them there if you would like. So, don't feel left out if you didn't get the treasure bag. The first thing we're going to use is a 4mm round bead. You have this strand in your treasure bag. I also have some either similar or just like it in my store on the website. This is a 4mm round imitation jade half peach, or it's also called half magma. So we're going to be using pretty much this whole strand. I have a few loose here to start with. And then we're going to be using the 2 chandelier components that came in your treasure bag. I have some of these left over, so I will list them in my store so they're available if you would like some. We're going to be using these 2 little components. They are a 5-loop chandelier component. And then we're going to be using the clasp that came in the treasure bag. Now, this is a big clasp. You can use any clasping you would like. However, you just have to adjust your length to accommodate the size of your toggle or whatever type of clasping you decide to use for this project. You'll also need a couple of jump rings. And these are 4mm round 20 gauge jump rings. You will also need some seed beads. So I'm using an 8/0 in 2 colors for this project. I have the galvanized permanent finish Starlight in the Toho line, and I have light beige 8/0s in the Toho line. We're going to also be using an 11/0 seed bead. This is a Montana Gold 11/0 in the Toho line. And then you're going to need some Fireline or Nanofil. You can use 10-pound Nanofil or 6-pound Fireline. I'm going to be using this Fireline, this thermally fused tough Fireline. Works pretty good. And I'm going to be using a size 10 beading needle. You can use a size 12 also. And the first thing you're going to do is put a full wingspan of thread onto your needle. And that is when you spread your arms out to your sides like they're wings and you're going to fly away. You measure from the fingertips of your first hand across the length of that arm across your chest, the length of the second arm into your fingertips on that second arm. That is a wingspan. You may need to extend your Fireline during this process, and I will put a link to a video that will show you how to do that in the description box beneath the video player. So let's go ahead and thread our needles and get started. The plan for this project is to make 2 strands that we will put between the first 2 holes on these components for either side, and then we're going to make a little bit different strand for the center. So this stitch is a stitch that I did in my last tutorial. However, we're just using different beads, but it's the same stitch. So I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. However, you can reference the last tutorial, which is dainty stackable bracelets. And you can watch that. That'll be a little bit more detailed for this stitch. However, it's pretty simple, so really shouldn't have much of a problem with it. So how we're going to start this is we're going to pick up onto our needle a 4mm round, an 8/0 seed bead, and I'm using my gold 8/0 seed beads for this particular stitch. And then when we do our next strand, we'll be using the other color. So I'm going to be using, when I reference an 8/0, it will always be the gold one for this particular strand. So we have onto our needle a 4mm round, an 8/0, a 4mm round, and an 8/0. Let me reposition my camera just slightly, and I'm going to drag these down to the end of my thread. Now you have to leave at least a 12-inch tail for this so that we can sew our strands onto our component. So leave it yourself about 12 inches. As you work through, it'll be easy to ignore it. The first 1 or 2 may kind of bother you. Now that you have left your tail, you're going to come up through the first bead that you put on. So through this first 4mm round, I'm going to hold on to my tail, and I'm going to hold on to that bead rather firmly and pull this around so that I don't pull into my extra thread I left, just like this. Now let's get just a little bit closer, and we're going to sew through this entire unit. So just go ahead and sew all the way around. So I'm coming from the 4mm round into the 8/0, into the next 4mm round, into the next 8/0, and then I'm going to sew up past it to the 8/0 here. So up past my tail. So I'm going to go into this first 4mm round closest to where my thread is coming out, and then into this 8/0 here. Now I'm going to take my tail thread, and this 8/0 is big enough. You should be able to do this without a needle. Just take your tail thread and put it into the 8/0 seed bead closest to where your tail is coming out. So it's coming out here. You're just going to put this tail through this 8/0 and pull it through. That way we are prepared when we want to sew this onto our component. Now we're just going to leave that long tail just hanging there, and we're going to sew through this component one more time to tighten it up and make sure that it stays nice and neat. So we're coming out of this 8/0. Let's go ahead and sew all the way around again until we come back through the 8/0 we started in. So go up into the 4mm round, go into the 8/0 where your tail is, just ignoring your tail, and then go into this 4mm round and into this 8/0 again. Give a tug on both threads, make sure everything is nice and neat. Let's get a tiny bit closer here, and we will start our first component. So I'm going to just hold on to this unit like this, and I'm going to pick up I'm going to actually back out of this 8/0. Excuse me, I am very sorry. We're going to back out of this 8/0, and we're going to be coming out of this 4mm round. And then we are going to pick up 3 11/0 seed beads onto our needle. And then we're going to pick up a 4mm round, and then we're going to pick up an 8/0, a 4mm round, and an 8/0 seed bead. So we're coming out of the 4mm round here, we're picking up 3 11/0s, 4mm round, 8/0, 4mm round, and 8/0. We're going to drop this down to the 4mm round we're coming out of, just like this. Now this is kind of a strange little stitch we're going to do. So hold on to your first component and then hold on to your first 4mm round on your thread and come up through the bottom. So the opposite side from which you're coming out of, you're going to come up through the bottom of this first loose 4mm round, and you're going to pull your thread through until it comes up into a little circle like this. Now you need to push down on that bead and pull your thread tight to make sure that this 4mm round is lined up right next to the 3 seed beads here. Then you can just flip this around. If it's sideways, you can flip it around if it's over here when you do it. Right now it's lined up perfectly and I can sew through it. So I'm going to sew through this component again. So I'm just going to go through this 8/0, this 4mm round here, and this 8/0 here, and then back through this 4mm round. And my unit is secure. Like I said, you can pull on your working thread and push your unit down if it moves up away from those 11/0s. Now we're going to sew into this 4mm round so we can attach the other side of the unit. So we're going to go down into this 4mm round, exit, and we're going to pick up 3 11/0 seed beads onto our needle. And I will do a couple units so that if you don't get it on one, you'll get it on the next one. Just hang in there. So I've got 3 11/0s. I'm going to go directly into the 4mm round opposite of the one I'm coming out of. And I'm just going to pull those seed beads down, just like this. Now I need to move my tail out of the way, sew into the 8/0 seed bead right here. I'm going to hold on to it. And then I'm going to sew back up through this side of the unit. So I'm going to go into this 4mm round here, just like this. I'm going to go through all 3 of these seed beads and up through the 4mm round on top of them. I'm going to hold on to my unit and pull my thread through, just like this. And then I'm going to go into the 8/0 this time. Now, if you find that your unit is loose and it's not looking perfect, go ahead and sew through the entire unit again, and I'll show you how to do that. Some people don't like to sew through. I prefer sewing through again simply because it makes everything neater and stronger. So to sew through the whole entire unit again, you're going to go down into the 4mm round, the 11/0 seed beads, and into the 4mm round on one side in one stroke. And then you're going to go into the 8/0. Turn your unit and go into all of the beads on this side. Make sure you don't go past those 4mm rounds. Make sure you go into, or not 4mm rounds, make sure you go into the 11/0s, because it's easy to think you're in there and you're not. And then we're going to go into this 8/0 here. Now my unit is very strong, tight, and secure and looks really nice and neat. Now we're going to make our next unit. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to pick up a 4mm round, an 8/0, and a 4mm round. Oops, come here. Oh, come here. There we go. Just like this. And then we're going to go into the opposite side of the 8/0 we're coming out of. We're going to pull this down. And then we're going to sew through this. So go up through the 4mm round, pull it tight, go into the 8/0, pull tight, and the next 8/0, or excuse me, 4mm round. Okay, so my beads are just whatever I decide they are today. And then into this 8/0, just like that. So basically all you're doing is sewing around the entire little unit start that we've put on here. Now to create the rest of the unit, you come up through this 4mm round and you pick up 3 11/0 seed beads onto your needle. Then you pick up a 4mm round. These little holes are hard to see. Sorry about that. And then an 8/0, a 4mm round, an 8/0, and you're just going to drop this down to your little unit here. Now, your 4mm round is loose. What I like to do is just kind of balance it in my fingers here, this very first 4mm round we put on, and then go up through the bottom of it, just like this. And then I hold it between my fingers and pull these beads up until they make a little loop like this. Now I'm going to sew through this entire little loop, and you can see it's kind of out and away. That's okay, because I can just flip it over when I'm ready to sew it together. So here I can just go through all of my beads again in this little unit to secure them. So I'll go through the 8/0, I'll go through the 4mm round, I'll go through the 8/0, and up through this 4mm round here. If your little beads escape, you can always pull on your working thread and push them back down. Now at this point I can flip this over so it's in line with the rest of the piece, and then I just go into this 8/0 here, and then into the 4mm round here, and I'm ready to attach the other side of my unit. So I'll pick up three 11/0 seed beads, and I will go directly into the 4mm round opposite the one that we just created, and pull this down. And there you have your next unit. Now you can sew through the entire unit. So go through the 8/0, go up through the 4mm round, and all three of these beads, and then through the 8/0. Here you can start another unit, or you continue to sew around. So you could start your unit here, or like I like to do, especially for this particular bracelet, it just kind of keeps everything nice and neat. I am sewing around the entire unit after I make it. So I'm just sewing around until I get back up to this 8/0 seed bead. It does help to keep things looking very nice, and it does make it stronger. So I recommend that you do it, but of course you don't have to. And then we are going to make our next unit. So we pick up a 4mm round, an 8/0 seed bead, and a 4mm round. And we go through the opposite side of the 8/0 that we're coming out of. Pull this down, and I'm just going to flip this over a little bit so I can get access to it, and I'm going to sew around the entire unit. So up into the 4mm round, the 8/0, the other 4mm round, and then into the connecting 8/0. Now I'm secure. I can go up into this 4mm round here and begin my next unit by picking up 3 11/0 seed beads, and then I'm going to pick up a 4mm round, an 8/0, and a 4mm round. Come here. And drop this down to my piece. And then I'm going to grab a hold of that first loose 4mm round and come around into the bottom of it, just like this. I'm going to pull this down until my little unit wraps around, and I missed an 8/0. So if you miss an 8/0, you will know. Make sure that you pick up onto your thread a 4mm round, an 8/0, a 4mm round, and an 8/0. I'm going to leave that mistake in just so that you can see how to correct it. Just pull your thread back through and then go into the 4mm round here. And now you can see I have a nice proper unit with that 8/0 there. And I'm going to just push down on that 4mm round and just pull my working thread until I have no slack between my 11/0s and my 4mm round. And then I am going to sew through the entire little unit again until I get into the 4mm round above the 11/0s here. When you pull this through, make sure you hold on to it so you don't pull it away from your 11/0s, and then flip your unit over, and then go into the 8/0. Now we're going to pick up 3 11/0 seed beads, and first we're going to go into the 4mm round. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted by my phone. I should have moved that. But anyway, we're going to go down into the 4mm round, and we're going to pick up 3 11/0 seed beads, and we're going to go into the 4mm round opposite. And then we're going to sew through the entire unit. So go through the 8/0 and sew all the way around. And like I said, the dainty stackable bracelet tutorial will show this stitch to you again, and you will see how just changing the beads changes the appearance. I don't think I sewed all the way around each unit on that one, but on this one, it seems to make everything look a little bit better, neater, so I am doing the extra sew around on this one. Now, you will just continue making these units until you have 9 units. Now, this is going to be totally contingent upon the length of bracelet that you want to achieve. So, I have done 9 units, and I'm counting a unit from the seed beads here, so I just count 1, 2, 3, 4, and I have 9. So, if you want to make a 7-inch bracelet, which is what I am kind of aiming for, I may get a little bit bigger than that. That is the amount of units you want to make. If you're going to make a smaller bracelet, if you're aiming for a 6-inch or a bigger bracelet, 8-inch, you will have to modify the number of units you make. So the way you want to do this is I'm going to lay this out on my ruler here. So first, I'm going to pick up my 2 little components and put them on either side, leaving a tiny bit of space for my connection. So just like 3 or 4 millimeters here, probably about 4 millimeters. Leave that for your connection, and then pick up your clasping and put it on either side. I'm going to put this one on this side and this one on this side, leaving enough room for a 4mm jump ring also, just like that. And then I'm going to measure from the toggle halfway through the toggle. So let's see, I want to start about here. And you can see my layout is right about 7 inches. So you can make your strand, and then you can do this layout and measure it and see if you get what you want. A small bracelet will end up to be 6 inches in total. A medium, 7 to 7.5. Small would be 6 to 6.5. And a large would be 8 to 8.5. So that will give you a guide on how many you need to make on your units. And then you are going to make 2 of them. Exactly the same. So I have made my 2 with 9 units, making sure you leave at least 12 inches of working thread on either side. So your tail should have been left 12 inches, and your working thread side when you finish should be 12 inches on both of them too. And then you're going to set that aside. And then you're going to thread your needle again with another wingspan, and of course, remember, you may have to extend during this project. So let's go ahead and start our next stitch. So our middle strand on this bracelet is going to be a little bit different than our other 2. Well, totally different. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up 4 8/0 seed beads onto our needle, and this time I'm using my light beige, and I will be using 11/0 seed beads in this stitch also, and I'm still using my Montana gold. So you're going to bring these 4 seed beads 8 O's down to the end, and again leave a 12-inch tail at the very least. And then we're going to go up through the first seed bead that you put on. So just go through that one, hold on to it, hold on to your tail, push your needle through, and just bring these down into a little unit like this. This is just a little right angle weave unit. And then we are going to sew through this entire unit again. So go through the first bead you're closest to, holding on to it, because if you don't hold it between your thumb and finger, you're going to pull your thread through for your tail, and you don't want to do that. So then go into the next one, hold it, pull it through, and the next one, hold it and pull it through. And then we're going to go into this top one where the tail is. Here, now that we have secured this little unit, we're going to pick up an 11 seed bead. I'm going to get you a little closer. And we've picked up this 11 seed bead. We're coming out of this side of this top 11. We are going to cross our thread over and go into the opposite bead on the opposite side, right here, just like this. And we're going to pull this little 11 over the top of this unit, like this. Now don't try to squish it together too much, because you'll just get it out of whack. Just leave it like that, and then we're going to secure it by, now that we're coming out of this 11 seed bead, we're going to pick up, 8 seed bead, we're going to pick up an 11 and we're going to sew directly into the next one. Now you can hold onto the entire unit, pull your thread through and pop that in. You'll feel it pop in just like that. And then this will make structure for the entire unit here. Then we're going to go into the next one, pick up an 11 go into the next one, move that long tail out of the way, and pop that 11 seed bead down in there. Now I'm going to move my tail again, see if I can hold this. That's the bad part about leaving a long tail. You just have to kind of push it out of your way, and then we're going to go into the next seed beads. So we're just picking up an 11 and we're going through all 4 of these seed beads. So I'm coming out this one, I'm going into this one, I have an 11 I pop it down. And then I'm going to pick up another 11 and go into my last one here. And now I am going to just straighten this out. So you can see my tail thread is here, my working thread here. I'm going to sew around this entire unit just to make it nice and secure and pretty, and it's also our first unit, so we just need to secure it nice. So I'm going to go into the 11 and the 8 all the way around. So I've gone into an 11 8 11 I'll exit and pull, and then do that again. Go through the 8 the 11 behind it. And you may not be able to get through 3 beads at a time. That's okay. Just go through as many as you can. So again, and then once I get to where I'm opposite where my tail is, so this is the 11 opposite my tail, I am going to exit that 11 and that's where I will begin my next unit. So this is our completed first unit right here. Now we're going to pick up 4 8 seed beads onto our needle and go into the opposite side of the 11 we're coming out of right here. Pull these down and sew through them again, one at a time, so that we can get a nice structure with which to put our 11 on. So I'm going to go into just 1 bead at a time. So I'm going to go through the 8 pull my thread through, go through the next 8 pull my thread through, tighten it up, go through the next 8 and so on. And now that I've gone through the last 8 I will go through this 11 seed bead. And then I will go through the 8 on the other side of the 11 right here. Now I am going to put on my center bead, because doing that first will keep it from looking really thready. If you put your center bead inside of your unit after you put your other 11 O's on, though it may be more solid and feel like it's a better thing to do, you'll see your thread more. So we're coming out of this 8-0 seed bead. We're going to go into this one that's kind of diagonal and across from it, and we're going to go in on the opposite side from which we're coming out of this one. So we're coming out here, we're going to go into this one here, and we have an 11-0 on our needle, and we're just going to pull our thread through and pull that 11-0 into the center, and then just tighten it slightly. You don't want to pull your beads all out of whack yet. Until we secure them, they can pull out of whack. So now we are coming out of this 8-0 seed bead, we pick up an 11-0. We go into the next 8-0, pull that little bead down, go in, pick up another 11-0, go into the next 8-0, pull this bead down, and then we're going to sew up through this 11-0 here that we're connected to. Then we're going to sew down into the next 8-0. And then we're going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead. And we'll sew down into the next 8-0 and the 11-0 here. Now we have an entire unit. However, as I've said before, I like to sew through my entire unit again just to make sure it's secure, and it kind of cinches everything together nicer. So I'm just going to go up through all these beads again. You do not have to. You can start your next unit if you'd like, but I recommend going through all of your beads again just to make sure that everything looks nice and it is nice and strong, and you're going to have less problem with your bracelet breaking. Now we're coming through, we've sewn all the way around, we're coming through this bottom 11-0, and let's make one more unit. So we're going to pick up 4 8-0 seed beads, and we're going to go into the opposite side of the 11-0 we're coming out of, right here. So through each bead individually, just to get them prepped for our next stitch. So go through the first one at a time, go through the second one, and then the third one. This spreads them out, gives them a little structure, and makes it a little easier for us to place our center 11-0. So I've gone through my last one. Now I'm going to go through the 11-0 on the piece that we attached to, and then I will go through my first 8-0 on the other side of that 11-0 here. Make sure everything's nice and neat. Pick up an 11-0, cross over into the 11-0 at a diagonal here on the opposite side from which you're coming out of this 11, excuse me, they're 8-0s. So you're coming out of this 8-0, you're going to cross over and go into this 8-0 on the opposite side. Just watch what I'm doing, don't listen to me, because I don't seem to know what the name of my beads are. Oh, my. Now, I've just placed that in there. I'm not going to pull real tight or do anything crazy. I'm just going to let that lay there nicely. And then as I place my 11-0s between the petals here, it will tighten and give you structure. So now we're coming out of this 8-0. We're going to pick up another 11-0. And we're going to place an 11-0 seed bead in between each of the 8-0s. And then when we get to the 11-0 that's attaching, we just go through it. Then go into the next 8-0. Pick up another 11-0. And then you can go into the next 8-0 and 11-0. And then sew through the entire unit, through all the beads, the 8-0s and the 11-0s. Giving structure and strength to your unit. See if I can take both of those. Sometimes it's at an angle you can't go through the 11-0 and 8-0 at the same time on the attaching side, but sometimes you can. So we're going to continue sewing around here. until we get to this tiny little bottom guy here, right there. And this is the stitch that you will make. If you have not quite gotten it into your head yet, just back up the video, watch it a few times, follow along, do it with me, and then once you have that, we're going to go ahead and continue making this until we have 21 units. The easiest way to count your unit is by the seed bead on the top of each unit. So count until you have 21, or the exact same length as the previous strands you have made. So you can just lay it out and make sure all 3 strands are the same length. So I'm going to lay this out nice and neat and make sure they're all very, very close in length, just like this. And then you'll know you have enough units. Now, we're going to put our first couple strands aside, and we're going to attach this middle strand first, since it'll be easier to do it first, and then we'll have access to the outside loops to do the other 2 strands. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you are coming out of your 11-0 seed bead on the top unit here. Make sure that you have sewn through this unit completely so that it's nice and secure, and then come out of this 11-0. And then we are going to pick up, make sure you have left yourself a nice amount of thread to work on both sides too, so at least 12 inches on either side. And then you're going to pick up an 8/0 seed bead and drop it down to your piece, just like this. And then we're going to come up through the most center loop here. So there should be 2 loops on either side of the one you're coming through. Come up through it, pick up an 8/0 seed bead, and drop it down. I'm using my gold 8/0s for this. And then I'm going to go back into the loop again, just like this. So let me get centered and closer so you can see what I'm doing. So I've dropped this 8/0 down. I put this one on. I'm going back through the loop. And I'm just going to pull this down until that little 8/0 is sitting on top of the loop. I'm bringing my thread back around because it got a little weird. And then I'm just going to straighten this little 8/0 out so it lays nice on top of there. The other 8/0 you want to push down so that it's laying right next to the 11/0 you're coming out of. So this one should be laying nice and flat. This one should be across the unit, just like this, or across the loop on your component. Then you're going to pick up another 8/0 seed bead, drop it down, and then we're going to go into the opposite side of the 11/0 we're coming out of. Push it down so that it lays out like this. Now I'm going to try to pick this up, hold my finger behind it so I keep it nice and secure. Let me back off just slightly, it's a little blurry. Then we're going to go up through the 8/0 on this side. So I'm coming out this way from the 11/0. I'm going to go up into this 8/0 and then up into the loop. Then I'm going to go back down into this 8/0. So I'm just sewing this 8/0 to the loop. Bring it down and then go through the 11/0 on your piece. Now this is going to be a little fidgety and a little loose, but we'll tighten it up. I'm going to hold on, pull through that 11/0. Then I'm going to go into this 8/0 and under the loop, just ignoring the 8/0 that's on top of there already, and just go under that loop and pull. Straighten everything back out because it's going to get all weird, and that's okay. Straighten it out and then go down into the 8/0 again that you just went through or came up through, or are attaching, whatever you want to say. Now we're going to go into this 11/0 again. Now this top bead is all weird, So what you're going to do is you're going to come up through this 8/0 here, the one you're next to. Let me get centered here. Sorry about that. We're going to come here, up here. We're going to go into the 8/0, laying on top of the unit right here. And then we're going to go down into this 8/0 on this side. Make sure your thread doesn't get tied up on any of those loops. Just kind of steer it out of the way and bring it back down. Now go through the 11/0 again. Now, just to make sure that we are nice and secure and we're not just filling up this 11/0 and pulling it away from everything, we're going to sew around the entire unit. So I'm going down into this 8/0, 11/0, 8/0, and 11/0. All the way around. See if I can get through here. Back into this 11/0. And then I'm going to come back into this 8/0 up here. Then I'm going to go underneath the loop because I want to secure this middle one again. So I'm going to go underneath that loop into the 8/0 that's laying on top of the loop. Make sure you don't get your thread over it like I just did. It's very easy to get your thread wrapped, so just loosen it and pull and it'll come back through for you. Then go through the back of the loop again. We're just securing this 8/0 to the loop. And then go through the 8/0 on this side, right here. And then into the 11/0. And that's probably about as much thread as that 11/0 is going to handle. So now I'm going to sew down into a couple of the beads here. And to get through this 11/0 down here, I will go into one more 8/0 here, and I'm just going to tie a knot. And then I'm going to sew around this entire unit. You can tie as many knots as you'd like. I think I'll go here. And tie a knot here. So just go in between the beads. There's a little thread bridge that you can go under and grab, perhaps. Let's see, come here, you, come here. No, 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 no. All right, let me get under here. There, no, we still didn't do it. Okay, well, it doesn't want to do it there, so I am going to move over here. Go down this one and go up behind this little 11/0 and move my thread over so that when I tie my knot, I can drag it down between the beads here. So basically just sew through, find a place to knot on your thread bridges. And then I am going to cut my thread off right here and leave a tiny bit of a tail. And where I've got this tail here, I can burn it down which will make another stop for the thread, kind of knotting it again in a way. I'll just roll it into my beads. And that's how you attach that. Now we're going to put our needle on the thread that we reserved for the other side and do the exact same thing. So let's go ahead and thread our needles and go ahead and attach this one the same way. Now, it may look like it was really difficult to follow me doing that. All you have to do is make sure that your beads are well attached to that loop. So as you find a path to go up through, you'll figure out how to get them on there just fine. You want to make sure that after you put your middle one on, you attach the side ones again by going up through it, then go through the 8/0, and then go through the 8/0s again, and then just bring your thread behind and attach this bead again. So it's really not as difficult as it looks. You can watch the video over a couple of times until you can figure out a path. But as you can see, this lays on here very nicely. Looks really good. And we're going to do that on the other end the same way. And then we'll come back and I'll show you how to attach the other two strands. Okay, so now I have secured my center strand on both sides. I'm going to show you how to secure your outside strands. And we're going to work through 2 loops this time. Go ahead and put your needle on one of your strands that you set aside and pick up an 8/0 seed bead and drop it down. Then you're going to go through, let's get centered here and closer, maybe not that close, right there. Then we're going to go through this loop, the inside loop here. Then we're going to pick up another 8/0 seed bead and drop it down. Then we're going to go through this outside loop right here. I do need to be closer, I think, just like that. Okay. Now, once you have gone through this loop, let's see if I can pick this up. Pull your needle through and pull those 2 8/0s together. So you have got onto your loop now, you have an 8/0 underneath and an 8/0 over the top. So you've just come up through, put an 8/0 on, come back down through the second loop, the outside loop. Pick up another 8/0, drop it down. And then go into the 8/0 on your unit right here and pull that through. And just kind of draw it all together. Now, I'm going to try to hold this. It's hard to stay in camera and keep my hands out of your way. So now I'm coming out of the 8/0 on my unit. I'm going to go up into the 8/0 on the side I'm coming out of, and then behind the loop, the inside loop, and through it, just like this. And then I am going to go through the top 8/0 here. And then I'm going to go through the loop on this side. I'm doing this slowly so you can follow. Then I'm going to go through the 8/0 on this side. And then I'm going to go through this middle loop here. Now, you need to make sure your 8/0s stay down underneath the loop, and we're going to secure each of these 8/0s underneath here on their own. So now we're going to go up through this 8/0, then we're going to go back down into it. So basically I'm just sewing around that loop, through the 8/0, and then back through the 8/0. And then I'm going to go into the 8/0 that attaches to the unit. Then I'm going to go up through this 8/0 and behind and through the loop. And then back down into the 8/0. And now we're going to sew into the 8/0 on your strand, again, into the 8/0 on this side. Come on. And through the loop. This is much easier when you don't have to worry about your hands being in the way. And your thread is going to get all tangled up when you do this. Just kind of free it and just move on. Go very slowly. And then we're going to go through the 8/0 between the loops here, right here. Then we can go down into this loop and into the 8/0. So around one more time, going into the 8/0 on the unit, into the 8/0 here, and just come out of the 8/0 right here. So I'm not going through the loop, I'm just coming out of the 8/0. Make sure my thread doesn't fall out of my needle here. And then I'm going to go through the 8/0 on top. And then instead of going through the loop again, I'm going to go through the 8/0 on this side. Pull everything tight and go into the 8/0 attaching again. Pull all together so it's nice and tight, looks good like this, and then go down into the 4mm round right here. And I'm going to go through the 11/0s and the 4mm round underneath that. Then I'm just going to get to where I can access this thread bridge between the 8/0 and the 4mm rounds here. I'm going to go between the beads, through them, create a loop, and go through that loop. Tie a knot, go through the 8/0. Then I'm going to go down through the 4mm round, 11/0s, 4mm round, and tie another knot on this next thread bridge right here. Get my loop accessible. Go through my loop and then go into the 8/0. I'm going to cut my thread off. I didn't leave much of a tag, but I'm going to see if I can burn that down a little bit. And then this is what you have. So you will go ahead and do the other side exactly the same way and then put on the other strand the same way. Now the alternative to that, if that looks really hard to you, which it really isn't, it's just difficult to show you the path without it looking difficult, but it really isn't. You're just going to find a path to anchor those beads to the loops. And as you sew, you will see basically where you need to be. And you can see it's nice and neat. It looks really good. An alternative to this would be to see if you can slide a jump ring through this 8/0 and then attach another jump ring and attach it to the loops. You'd have to attach one here and attach one here. So small jump rings. But then you have an 11/0 on this one. So the easiest way, because you won't be able to put a jump ring through an 11/0, the easiest way would be to come up through the side beads, the 8/0s down here, and put on a wire guardian. The same here. You come up through the side beads, put on a wire guardian, sew around your unit, and then you can put a jump ring on. 2 jump rings on this side, 1 jump ring here, and you could attach it that way. However, that's going to give you a lot of slack between your units and your component here. So what's going to happen is you're going to have more length in your bracelet, so you'll have to make shorter strands, or you just have a bigger bracelet. one of the two. But you could do it that way, just sew on a wire guardian and put on your jump rings. That would work. However, I encourage you to try doing this, because once it's in your hand and you can watch me a couple of times and see how I just go through it, you should be able to attach just fine. I'm going to go ahead and attach my other end, and then I'm going to put this strand on. I'm not doing all that on camera because that would be a very long video. So I'm going to go ahead and attach it, and I'll come back and show you how to put your clasping on, and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so now you can see that I have attached all of my strands, just sewing them on with the 8/0 seed beads, and it's really very pretty. Worked out really well. The length is good. Everything is good. Now I'm going to put on my clasping on either side. So I have my two little 4mm jump rings, and I'm hoping they're big enough to go through both clasps, because I didn't try it yet, but we're going to find out. If not, I'll have to get a little bit bigger. But I have my little jump ring. I'm holding it in my flat nose pliers. The opening is here. I'm going to use my other pliers and just open it like this. So I've got some bent nose pliers here. Just 2 pairs, and let's see if I open that wide enough. I'm going to slide it onto the loop on the component, and then onto the loop in on my jump, or on my toggle, and close it. And it is big enough, it's fine. See if I can get it to close well. Okay, so now I have my toggle on this side, and then of course I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So just grab my jump ring and open it and pop the other end on, and then we'll see what the length has done and all of that, because I was basically designing this as I was showing you. So I don't know, but we're going to find out. Okay, so I'm going to pick this up and put it on here, and then I can get part of my bead mat in there, yeah, and I will close it. Okay, so my dearies, there is the finished look here. I may have to, this may not have enough room, I may have to put 2 jump rings on here to have it slide through well. We're going to find out. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, see how I'm stopping here? I'm going to have to put on another jump ring on this side. So let me grab another jump ring and pop it on there. I'll just put it on the jump ring that's on there, and then put it back on, just like I just showed you. I'm just going to add another one. Okay, so now I've got a little bit more room putting 2 jump rings on this side, which I figured that would probably happen, but let's go ahead and try it now and see if I can pull it through. And you can see now I can easily pull that through. It adds a tiny bit more length to my bracelet, but actually it's fine. It's just fine. It fits me well. So I will measure the end result here, and we can see exactly what has happened. And like I said, you can use a smaller toggle, you can use any kind of clasping that you would like. It's just with the length of these components and the width of the bracelet, this toggle works just fine, and it actually looks pretty on it. So let's measure and see what we've ended up with, just to give you reference on how big this bracelet is. If you follow my instructions exactly as far as length goes, you will get a 7-inch bracelet. So you can see you measure from the center of the round toggle part, and it is 7 inches. So that's what you will get if you follow my instructions exactly and you use the same stuff I'm using. And I think this turned out really pretty, and I hope you like it. And I just wanted you to see the comparison between what this stitch looks like, because I made these in individual strands too, this stitch here, and this is what it looks like in 4x3 rondelle alternating colors, and this is what it looks like in a crackle round different little colors with the butterfly. And then in this one, it's much more sophisticated. So you can make it very whimsical, you can make it cute and shiny, or you can make it more sophisticated just by changing out your beads. And I think if you want to make this individual strand, I think using a 4mm round pearl would look really pretty too. And there's one more modification I can do with this strand, and I may do that. Instead of doing doubles here, we could just go straight through with our 11 O's on each individual and not have doubles here. We could do that too. So anyway, that is what that turns out to look like, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Bye-bye.